welcome to today's episode of Her Version, a podcast dedicated to hearing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and if you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Today, we have an amazing guest speaker with us, Christine. Christine is a mother, certified EFT coach, life coach, and cancer thriver. She is the owner and operator of School for Joy. Christine was once an over-emotional, unconfident woman with tons of self-doubt. Through the years, Christine has completely changed her outlook on life and her view about herself. Listen in as she explains the changes she has made over the years and what kind of joy it has created for her life. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm definitely doing well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with us and tell us some of the nuggets of goodies that I'm actually really excited about today.
Good. I hope I'm like, it's such a sell there. I'm like, man, I hope I can live up to that.
Please. It's funny how it hits us, right? When you hear somebody else reading it, it's like, wow, am I really all of those things?
Right.
But you are all of those things. And I appreciate you being here. So how's life? What's going on with you?
Oh, life is good. I am, enjoying I'm sorry, I'm not speaking. I haven't had caffeine this morning, so that may be part of the problem.
I totally get it.
I am enjoying the last days of summer. My kids go back to school in early September, and I'm on the East Coast, so we're like the last, I think, in the area of the United States to go back to school. So after Labor Day.
No kidding. Why so late?
I don't know. It's always been that way.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I have a 17-year-old senior, and he started school on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, I think my daughters go back. I think Labor Day is the 7th, and they go back like the 9th or something.
Wow, that's so interesting. I've never heard. I mean, probably, but that's interesting. Well, cool. How old are your children?
I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old.
Very nice. Very nice. So similar. So you have a senior also?
She's starting college.
Oh, nice. Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, listen, we have so much to talk about today, and I kind of want to get in. One of the things that I like to do before we actually get into all the goodies is I love for our female audience to kind of hear the background of the individual that I'm speaking to, just so that, a lot of times that's a good way to relate. It's a good way to build rapport. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear kind of like your early years, before you got married, and, who you were and all that good stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, and I think that's really important, because sometimes we have these images of people, like we look at other people and we think, oh, they had it, like they don't struggle with anything because they had everything so easy. And like if you looked at my life growing up, you might think that, because I had like the stereotypical perfect family on the outside. Everything looked good, and I thought everything was fine. I thought I had the perfect family. But growing up, I always had this sense of like unrest, or like I saw myself as really sensitive and emotional, and my family saw me that way, not in a bad way. I didn't ever feel like I was labeled, but like in a negative way, but I took it that way. Like I saw myself as sort of like the emotional weak link. And so I didn't really trust my feelings. And what I came to find out was that there was actually my parents weren't very happy together, and they were, like of the school that you stay together for the sake of the children. And so there were lots of undercurrents of unhappiness and tension that I was picking up on, but didn't realize. And so I thought, like, God, what is wrong with me? Like, I have everything I could possibly want. Like, it must be me. And so I think, like, what that taught me, and I am like an intuitive person and I am a sensitive person, but what it taught me was to not trust my feelings. And so that got me into trouble later on in life. And so I saw myself. And so one of the things that I learned to do, just to say, like, I love my parents. They were doing the best they could. Like, there's no blame there. It's
Yeah, of
just,
course.
there
Thank
was
you.
for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
There was anger and all of that, but I have definitely worked through that. And so one of the ways that I was the oldest child, the only girl, so like the stereotypical straight arrow, overachiever, stay quiet, don't rock the boat. I think on some level I thought, like, there's something I could I'm doing something to cause this, or like, if I'm just like perfect, then everything will be okay. And so I stayed really quiet. So I saw myself as like not particularly interesting, kind of a wallflower. And yeah, that was just my self-image for a really long time. And it definitely impacted the choices that I made. I mean, at the same time, I did well academically. I went to college. I went to graduate school. I seemingly was successful, but I definitely struggled with self-esteem and self-confidence and really believing that I was capable, and lovable. I think I didn't see myself as special in any way. And I think I also, um, um, like, I realized this as I was thinking about this interview. I had this sort of like thought that someone was going to come along and rescue me. And even though I did a lot of work, like even as a kid, like once I found out that I had like there was stuff going on with my parents, and they were kind of like, we're not going to be talking about this outside of the house. And I was like, oh, the hell we're not, like no, I'm not doing that. So like I did have those moments.
Yeah.
But I and I did like go to therapy, and I did all that stuff, but I didn't I was only willing to go to a certain point. Like, I was afraid of what was underneath, and it wasn't conscious, but I realized later on that I wasn't really willing to do the work because the feelings that I had really scared me, and there was a lot of shame and fear. And again, going back to that, well, if anyone found out about this, like, they would think I was crazy or unlovable, or so definitely there was a lot of that too. And so there was this feeling of, I'm going to meet, and honestly, and it's sort of embarrassing really, but like, I'm going to meet the right guy and it's all going to be okay. And because I didn't feel like in high school, I sort of felt like not the ugly duckling, but like the best friend. Like, I was, everyone wanted to date my friends, and I was like the girl that, you could hang out with because I was the nice girl and whatever. And so I didn't date all that much. And so my mom always used to say, oh, the nice girls always find the nice men. And so I think I thought I didn't have to do any, like, it was just going to happen for me. And yeah. And so I met my husband, and there were lots of red flags from the beginning, but I didn't see them because I didn't want to.
So when did you get married?
I got married late. I met my ex-husband, when I was 26, but we didn't get married till I was 32.
Got it.
I was afraid to get married, honestly.
You were afraid?
I was afraid, yeah. Like, I wanted it, but I was terrified of it, just because of everything that I'd been through with my own family.
100%. Wow, that's so interesting. Never would have thought that. So the whole thought process, as far as getting married and having somebody save you, that's actually a thought that a lot of women have.
Yeah,
So I
Absolutely.
found out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's, like, so pervasive in our culture, and I think it's become more unconscious now because, we're more aware, we're more feminist in our views, but it's still like that, I think there's a book like The Cinderella Complex or something like that, and we do feel like someone's gonna come and rescue us, and
Yes.
it's a really scary proposition, I think, like,
Yeah.
you should never give away your power.
Yeah. 100%. So, you got married early 30s.
Mhm.
So how did that whole journey I know
Not
that's the turning point.
that's such yeah, so we were together for, 5 years before we got married, and there were, as I said, there were lots of red flags. It was definitely a very tumultuous relationship. We had our highs, but we had a lot of lows, and I think we both wanted to be married and to be happy. But I think we really had no idea what the hell we were doing.
Mm.
And we each had our baggage. And so it was a struggle. It was really a struggle a lot of the time. And I knew on some level, like that's the thing because again, I didn't trust my feelings. So I denied a lot, and even when I didn't deny, like I was in therapy, and so I was acknowledging things, but I was also lying to myself. I was lying to my therapist, like,
Wow.
not because I thought I was supposed to want things in my marriage. Like I thought I was supposed to want to, you know, cook for my husband. I hate cooking. I hate it. I don't want to do it. And he was giving me an out. He like it was important to him, but he was also like, but if you can't do it, like that's okay, we'll work it through. And I was like, no, no, no. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. No, I wasn't fine with it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. But I thought that that's what I was supposed to do. Like that was what a good wife did. And if I could do that, then maybe everything would be okay. Like I was so constrained by the what should be. And I've heard Glennon Doyle talks about that a lot, how like we cause ourselves so much stress and drama because of the picture we have in our head of what it's supposed to be, and our reality is different, and we're so busy trying to make our reality into that picture instead of just saying, hey, this is my reality, like this is working for me, or like I need to like accept it and embrace it. And
Yeah.
so I did not do that at all.
Wow, no kidding. That's that right there. It's so small. Um, but I could see how that could leak into other areas easily. That whole thought process
Yeah.
there. That's very
And I
interesting.
think that women in general, I mean, certainly like the more I talk to women, we there's I'm not going to say every woman because hopefully there are some women that have worked through this, but we all have these ideas that they're so ingrained in us as to like
Mm.
what we're supposed to do, and we're supposed to take care of everyone else and make ourselves smaller, and put everyone else's feelings ahead of our own. And so I think that that's really damaging, and so often we don't even know that we're doing it. And so that was what I did throughout most of my marriage, even when I knew. And there would be times I would say, like, and he and I were both, neither one of us was happy. And we talked about it sometimes, but usually what would happen would be like one of us was in an okay place and the other one was unhappy. And so the person in the okay place would try to talk the other one out of it, because we were both afraid, like we didn't, neither one of us wanted to like deal with the possibility of a failed marriage. We just like thought that was just a terrible thing. And
Right.
so we went back and forth, and I knew, and then when I had my children, I started to worry that I wasn't like modeling for them. I wasn't being the best parent I could be because I was carrying so much emotional baggage because I was really
Wow.
unhappy.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a really, like there were a lot of beautiful moments, but it was overall it was a tough time.
100%, 100%. This reminds me of an argument that I still think about sometimes with my son's father, where he worked crazy hours because we were trying to make ends meet. And I remember one day, like I vividly remember this. He came home. I was having like a total meltdown, crying fest, new baby, probably dealing with postpartum, but didn't really know what that was. And I was freaking out because I was so tired and the kitchen was a mess. And I was like, I just can't do this. I just can't do all the things. I can't go to work and take care of the baby and get the baby and do this and clean and do. And he goes, who told you that you have to clean the kitchen? And it didn't occur to me that like he never put that expectation on me. I actually had that expectation for myself, and it was literally causing me to have like a straight up, like, not panic attack, it wasn't that bad, but just like a total breakdown as a new mother. And I argued with him because I felt like he was lying, like he really did, but he was just like trying to be nice. So it like turned in. But now that I'm older, you know, and listening to you, that's exactly what we do. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah. And like you were lucky and I was lucky because my husband was the same way. He didn't have a lot of those expectations or open to conversation. There are a lot of women that are married to people that are like, yeah, absolutely. The kitchen's a mess. I can't believe I'm coming home to this.
Yeah, 100%. Good point. 100%. So I know that, you know, as your marriage kind of went along its journey, that's kind of when you started to kind of dip your toes into personal development and, you know, some of the training that you have. Can you kind of lead us through, you know, what it is you do and why you decided to look into that? Because I think there's a lot of women that are in that point right now, but they don't even know where to turn. They don't know what to do.
Well, let me just move my camera here. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, so I had always sort of been interested in personal development, but again, it was that like I was only willing to go to a certain level. So I read the books, I went to therapy, I did all the things you're supposed to do. And I'm just looking at the...
Yeah, do you want to read it out loud?
Yeah. I grew up never really knowing what a good wife was supposed to be. My mother was an alcoholic and my father's a narcissist. I had a 5-year violent and failed marriage, have been in therapy for the past 4 years myself to heal from all the trauma. Yeah, wow, that is a lot. And I totally agree with you that it's really hard when you don't have a good role model. I really didn't either. I didn't have nobody that I knew really well who had like a great relationship that I could model myself after. And it's really hard to try to figure that out on your own. But good for you for being in therapy and working on the trauma, because that is just so important. So like, just pat yourself on the back, because that's awesome. So awesome.
100%. 100%.
I forget.
We were talking about the kind of the journey of the
journey, right? So
the end of your marriage and personal development.
I was always interested in personal growth and development, but again, like kind of just got to a certain point and never really had like the guts. If I like read about something in a book, you know, I never had the guts to talk to my husband about it. Or, well, he's a litigator. So he argues for a living. So guess how many arguments I won? Not a lot. And he could just, and like, honestly, I don't think it was malintent, but he could just argue. Like by the end, I was like, wait, what? Like, I had no idea what I had even started out saying.
Yeah.
And so, but what happened was, so we got to a point and he was the one that was finally like, all right, this is not working for me. I don't think I can do this anymore. And so, but it was sort of like, but let's give it one last try. So we started going to couples therapy, but at that point, like when we had that conversation, I kind of hit the wall and realized like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage, but I have got to figure this out for myself, because I do not like who I am right now. I've lost the best parts of myself. This is not who I want to be. Mm-hmm. So that was my rock bottom, I think. And that was what really pushed me to, to start doing the work. And again, going back to that, like, I thought someone was going to rescue me. I think it was also like, I thought, well, if I sit on the therapist couch and I say the right things, like, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I realized, no, I actually really have to do the work. Like, I have to feel these feelings that I don't want to feel. I have to admit things to myself that I don't want to admit, but
Mhm.
I have to. There's no other way.
Yeah.
And so that was my turning point. So that was like a year before my marriage ended, and in that year we were going to couples therapy, and I was starting my personal journey. And so I, of course, was looking for what I could do. And somebody that I followed, a coach that I followed, mentioned this thing called the Tapping Solution World Summit, and I had no idea what it was. But I trusted her, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll try it. And it was free, so that was good. Free
Yeah.
is always good.
Yeah.
And so the Tapping Solution is an amazing organization, and they're dedicated to educating people about EFT, which is sometimes called tapping. And we'll talk more specifically about that a little bit later. But so they run this 10-day summit every year in February or March. And it was audio, it's now video. But they release 2 interviews each day, and you have access to them for 24 hours. And they're with tapping practitioners about how they use tapping with their clients around different issues, like whether it's money issues or pain or, emotional stuff. There, it can be used in so many different ways. And so I started listening to it, and the first thing I noticed within like a day or 2 was that I started sleeping through the night. And
Wow.
I had been dealing with major insomnia because of all the stress. And so I thought, okay, I don't care if it does anything else. If it helps me sleep through the night, then that's going to help me deal with everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then what I started to notice was more subtle shifts in, like my husband and I would be having a conversation, and I would say something he didn't agree with, and instead of backing down, I kind of just held my own. I was like, nope, no, this is really what I think. And so it started to snowball in a really positive way. And so that was one thing. And then the second thing that I found was Brene Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection, which I highly recommend to everybody, because that really changed my life too. And basically, in a nutshell, she is a shame and vulnerability researcher. If you don't know her work, you may know her work because she's just kind of exploded since around the time I found her, so the last like 10 years or so. She's got a bunch of TED Talks. If you Google
Wow.
Brene Brown TED Talk, you'll find them. She's amazing. But this book so what she found in her research was that there were basically 2 different kinds of people, like the average person, and then what she called wholehearted people, who like were in like all into life, and were wholehearted and loving and just embraced everything. And so when she dug down into the research, she found 10 life practices that they all had in common. And so she breaks it
Wow.
down for the rest of us. And so it's just, basically like embracing vulnerability, creativity, gratitude, letting go of this idea that we always have to be working. Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing book. So I would highly recommend it.
No kidding.
And those 2 things together were really what, like, they got me through.
Very awesome. Very awesome. What kind of, first of all, did you share this with your husband at the time, or?
That's a really great question. And the answer to that is no, I did not.
Okay. Why?
I mean, maybe I did in some small way, but not like wow, I really have to tell you about these two things that I'm doing because it totally has changed my life. No, I did not.
Got it. Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then,
Listen, no one's ever asked me that, and I never had thought about that before. But
yeah. And then, okay, so what, with the new knowledge that you had towards, the end of your marriage, could you have seen it kind of helping, or was it just an added thing to help you with your personal development and you as a person? Did it kind of help you see that the marriage wasn't working? Because sometimes that happens.
that's
Or,
what happened.
oh, wow.
It helped me see that the marriage wasn't working.
Wow.
That I was stronger than I thought, because I think a big reason that I stayed in my marriage, and I think this is true for so many people, is I was terrified of leaving because I didn't think I was strong enough to handle it.
Yeah.
I like I was a teacher, and then when my children were born, I stayed home for 5 or 6 years, and then I went back into the classroom for 3 years, and I found that it was changing. Like when I was in the classroom, the movement toward the insanity that we have right now was in full force. And God bless any teachers that are out there. You have the hardest job in the world. And so when I came back 5 years later, it was just the stress and the pressure was so incredible. And I felt like I couldn't be the teacher I wanted to be and the mother that I wanted to be at the same time. So I left the classroom. And so at the time that my marriage was falling apart, I had just started working part-time. And honestly, like I had resisted going back to work for years because I didn't think I could handle it and be a mother. And then I kind of found out like, no, I couldn't, And so I was terrified that if I left my marriage, I was going to be a full-time working single mother, and I was going to be exhausted all the time. And I just didn't think I could do it. And so what tapping and Brene Brown helped me figure out is, one, like my marriage isn't working. I am not happy. I don't think I can be happy, because honestly, what I also realized was that the best part of myself there was no room for her in my marriage, because there had become such a box, and it just wasn't gonna change. I didn't see it changing. And so I realized like, hey, I really like that person, and that's who I want to be. And I'm strong enough to figure out how the hell I'm going to do it.
Very cool. Very cool. And then, so you kind of sort of catapulted yourself into being a single mom. Like you took that on and you were ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I always say that like the end of my marriage was a mutual thing, but first for me, this was important for me that I did everything I could to try and save it. So when I walked away, I knew, like, I honestly felt like there was nothing else I could have done. It was over, because, I had 2 kids, and I didn't want to create a situation that wasn't if the marriage could be saved, I was open to that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like there were 2 kind of turning points in that last month, because I was in therapy, and I kept saying to my therapist, I don't know, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should stay. I don't know if I should go. And she said, you have to hang on. You're going to know when you know. Like,
wow.
You're going to know when you know. And I was like, okay. And Brene Brown says, like, you lean in, you lean into the uncertainty, just lean in, don't force it, whatever. So between the 2 of them, I was like, okay, I'm leaning in. This sucks.
Wow.
And there were 2 moments, 2 interactions that I had with my husband that were just like having water dumped on my head. And it was like, okay, this is it. We're done.
It became obvious.
It became really obvious.
No kidding. No kidding.
And at that point, like, you can't unknow it. And so it was like, I have no choice but to go forward.
100%. So all the nerves that you had, as far as taking care of yourself in a way, and the responsibility of that, and your mom telling you a long time ago that somebody was going to come and save you. How did that work as far as the challenges that you had to go through as a single mom?
Well, I had tapping, which was huge.
Yeah.
And that helped me control my anxiety and my stress. Again, it continued to help me believe that I was able to do it. It was really hard, I'm not going to lie, because it was I call it the trifecta. We decided we were ending our marriage. My husband lost his job, and we were going to have to sell our house because we couldn't afford it. And so the job that he ended up getting was down in Florida. And we lived in New York. And so I had to figure out what I was doing, and I didn't have, I had a job, and it was supposed to become full-time in the fall. So in New York. So I had to figure out what I was doing. And so I thought about moving down to Florida because I really didn't want my children to be so far away from their father. And I went down there and I looked at apartments, and I had a job interview, and I was just like, no, this is not going to work for me. Like, I don't like the heat. I don't do well in the heat. I don't want to be like dependent on him for, like, I will have nothing. I will have no support network. And so I decided that I was staying in the Northeast. I ended up moving to New Jersey for lots of reasons. So my children had to, they lost their family unit, their father moved away, and they lost their house, their, everything. So it was a really hard time, and there was a lot of guilt. There was a lot of shame around, I should have been able to fix this. I can't believe what I'm doing to my children. So there was all of that. And then there was the actual act of getting a house ready to be sold. And it was a really, yeah, Marianne, yes. Oh my God.
Wow.
It was a lot. It was not a great market. Thank God we had a great agent, and we had just redone our kitchen. So we were one of 2 houses in our town to sell in our price range that spring. Someone was looking out for us.
Wow.
Had to move my kids from a 4-bedroom colonial to a 2-bedroom rental apartment.
Wow.
And that was going to take our dog. And my ex-husband at some point was like, well, maybe you get rid of the dog. I'm like, I'm living in the car before I'm getting rid of the dog. You think I'm going to tell my kids that they're losing all of this and they're going to no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I found an apartment that took the dog. The landlord had to interview the dog.
Wow.
If you want to interview him, I'll bring him.
What kind of dog?
He's a black lab. And he's the best. So I knew he interviews well. So I knew once the landlord met him, it was
he interviews well. So, that's great. That's great.
So I had to do all of that. And then my ex came with us, and he stayed with us on the living room floor for a week before he moved down to Florida to kind of help deal with it. Because we tried, we did our best to be as amicable as we could, which was not always easy, but we did it. And which I am thankful for, because I know lots of people are not in that situation. And so then got my kids into school and whatever. And then I was dealing with, when I started working, I was dealing with a 2-hour commute each way. It was crazy. It was really crazy. I don't know how I did it, but I did, because that's what you do when you're a mom, especially when you're a mom. But I think you do what you have to do, and you just keep telling yourself you can do it.
100%.
And I got help. That's the other thing that's so important. I didn't do it on my own. And I think like so often we think I've got to do it on my own. No, you don't. You shouldn't do it on your own. I was lucky. I had family to help me. I had friends to help me. I went to a therapy group for women going through divorce. I took an online course with Brene Brown. I journaled, I tapped, I did whatever I needed to do. Self-care, that whole thing about the oxygen mask and put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned that it's absolutely true. I had to take care of myself so that I could take care of my kids.
Yeah, 100%. I love that you're saying that, because a lot of times we forget that.
Yeah, and I think we all try, because again, going back to that like shame thing, like there's so much shame around I'm struggling. I'm not supposed to be struggling. I'm supposed to have this figured out. And so I'm going to just have to figure it out myself. I have to do it by myself. No, you don't. And you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. And there are resources out there regardless of your financial situation. There are free resources, even if it's a Facebook group or, like some kind of self-help, like Parents Without Partners or a divorce meetup or something. There are places that you can go to get some support and at least have other people who are going through the same thing. And so that's the other thing, is we all think that we are alone and that we're the only ones experiencing it. And our experiences are individual, but they're also universal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think now, and more now than ever before, we're able to link up and, really come together as a community from all over because of social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it really doesn't matter what you're dealing with as a person, not even as a female, but just as a person. Yeah. If you Google that up, whatever it is, more than likely there's some sort of group that meets and that you can talk to and share your experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.